Brain-computer interfaces are data interfaces between brains and computers. They allow you to take thoughts and intended actions from a brain and turn it into something sort of external on a computer, like moving a robotic arm or allowing something to speak again, which is our first clinical trial. Someone like Stephen Hawking, who lost their voice due to ALS, allowing them to speak through a computer. But it can also read out things like mood. You can run the process in reverse, and you could take an image from a camera and put it into someone's primary visual cortex. You can take a sound and put it into their auditory cortex. And so this is, I mean, it's more of a modem is the right way to think of it. And like what's interesting from my perspective about brain-computer interfaces is that we're going about building this next platform for human technology integration. And unlike so many trends in tech, where like the side effects are all negative, in this particular case, the side effects are very, very positive, because in the pursuit of building Sam Altman's ultimate, AI merge VR machine, we're going to cure blindness. We're going to cure deafness functionally by providing a device that can provide that interface, giving someone the ability to control robotics. I mean, you can look at it for functional restoration standpoint. I mean, but the same thing that would allow someone to control like an Aptronic robot here in town and provide them mobility even when they're completely paralyzed, you can start thinking of crazy stuff. Like, it doesn't even need to be in the same city as you.
Right.
You could have 10 of them. And so you could have one in Paris, you could have one in Rome, one in Athens, and kind of switch between them like flicking through tabs on a computer. Yeah, the same platform infrastructure that's being built for these futuristic applications is the one that will be brought into the clinic to meet meaningful unmet medical conditions. And so whether you want to think about it as an investor or as an employee, as a medical platform, or as like the next wave of tech integration, it's the same hardware that you're building.
I think that's the key, is like you can do radically different things with our technologies as a whole with the exact same hardware design and general algorithms and all of that, right? Which is very unique to be able to do that. For us, you implant something under the skin and you can, control a robotic prosthetic limb, you can control a mouse cursor, you can fly a drone, you can do all these different things using the exact same hardware platform. And I always liken it kind of to a new version of the iPhone, right? Where we never could have perceived how important the iPhone would become in our everyday lives and how it would be our central hub for literally everything that we do. The same thing I believe is going to happen for human-machine interfaces. First, it will be people with unmet medical needs, but then eventually, over a long enough period of time, it can be an elective type of technology.
And I think the challenge for us is to build products that are so safe and so wondrous that everyone wants them, even beyond medical applications. And I think like in building something that someone that doesn't have a disability would want, we're also building really high quality products for patients. So much of this innovation happens in the application layer, the software that runs on top of a medical device. We're going to be innovating in that area anyway for the betterment of patients. But let's take, for instance, a visual prosthetic. Like if you had a 20/20 visual prosthetic to restore your vision, why wouldn't you layer on things like Google Lens? Like, why wouldn't you have that capability to immediately identify things in your world? All of those things you get for free. And so definitely there will be people who have vision and look and they say like, wow, that's really cool. That's basically a superpower. I'm interested in that. And I think that's how it will happen, is that people with disabilities will get restorative technologies and will have superpowers. And then people who don't have that disability will look at it and say, that's really interesting to me.
The example that I always give is breast augmentation in my world, right? I come from a plastics world, so let's comment there. Breast augmentation originally was designed following mastectomy, right? For reconstructive purposes after a mastectomy where there's a clear medical need and a way to get it reimbursed and all that. It doesn't take long for people to see that and be like, well, I don't need a mastectomy, but I still want that.
Right.
That's a superhuman type thing. And then we all know where that's led.
And plastic surgery is actually a great example, because if there weren't cosmetic plastic surgery for non-medical use, there wouldn't have been so much money coming into the field, and it wouldn't have matured so that now if you're in a car accident, like your craniofacial surgery and your restorative surgery is going to be better as a result of the amount of money that's come into plastic surgery for cosmetic purposes. And so like it is a flywheel. And so I think it isn't just going from one direction, like from medical to consumer to medical. It's a cycle.
We see like LASIK is another one which has come down drastically. When you actually have market forces being at play here, amazing things start to happen.
It's all the economy of scale. And, It takes the vision to be able to see where that comes into play and, have the wherewithal to be in it for the long run to get there. But that's where you can start to have a really massive payoff.